Max McLean, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Father. Thank you.
Welcome
very,
back.
very
Way to go,
much.
Max.
Thank
So
you.
we
Great
are
to
happy to see you. This is your third time.
Yes, sir.
The
Yes, sir.
trifecta. We love having you on, and we enjoy your work immensely.
Thank you.
But I'm trying to think of, you did the Screw Tape letters.
Yes, so that was our first visit.
One. But what's the one where it wasn't a book? It was the saga of C.S. Lewis. It was his personal conversion. What did you call that?
We call that The Most Reluctant Convert.
I love that one. Paul, were you in that? Yeah, I love that one. That one was superb. And now you're doing Robert Bolt's classic,
Right.
Thomas More. Is this? But I wouldn't know how to take, because you're usually a one-man show.
Well, last year we did Shadowlands, which was a 12-person show. We were branching out, but I mean the key thing is to produce theater that we think certainly has a very clear Christian message, that has the ability to articulate the faith to people that are weak in the faith, or outside the faith, or have no faith. We want to find shows that are imaginative, multi-layered, that really touch the heart. You know, Ecclesiastes says God has set eternity in our hearts, and so that's the kind of plays we're looking for.
Mm-hmm. How do you pick them, you and Paul?
Yeah, well, we pick them. We have a team, but we did a series of readings to get feedback. We did a reading of Brothers Karamazov. We did a reading of Paradise Lost, an adaptation of Paradise Lost. We did a reading of a play called We Will Not Be Silent, about Sophie Scholl, who was the only, offered the only Christian resistance to Nazi Germany during the war. So we're looking for plays that capture people's imagination and leave room for the Holy Spirit to do His work.
This is Bolt's classic,
Yes,
his play.
Yes.
And what now? But you must have done some research, because I always admire how you really delve into the persona. What's your favorite biography of?
Well, I read, I read a biography of Man for All Seasons many years ago, because the play, when I saw it in my 20s, it really confronted me with the reality of faith and courage, because I had no faith and probably had no courage. And so I really focused on what Moore was, or what Bolt was trying to articulate, because Bolt was a man of no faith, but he admired Moore's stand for conscience, because Moore had to make a choice, to choose between his allegiance to the God he loves and his duty to his King Henry VIII of that name. And it is a collision between what happens when fierce political will collides with deep moral courage. And that conflict makes for extraordinary theater.
Yeah. And remember, the one I like most is his dialogue with his daughter Meg.
Oh my goodness!
Remember, if anybody has a dry eye after that, you remember it, Father Dave. She really tries to talk her dad out of this stance, because she knows she's going to lose her father, and he listens lovingly, but he's not going to. The Bolt, in that magnificent introduction, when he says, "You're talking about a man with an adamantine sense of character, that's rock-like. And he really does it well." How do you answer this? This is, Max, see, a lot of people say, oh, you follow your conscience, and that's synonymous with whatever I want to do, I can do. Of course, for Thomas More, following a conscience didn't mean following self-will, willfulness. It meant following a well-formed moral conscience, correct? I mean, Pol Pot followed his conscience. Adolf Hitler followed his conscience, right? It's not following a conscience if conscience means whatever you want to do, do it. It follows a well-formed conscience. And that, of course, is the example of Moore, too, isn't it? Because he was really, you could justify, there were really two goods here, obedience to God and obedience to the monarch who represented God, right? So do you think about that at all? It really shows the proper understanding of conscience, doesn't it?
Well, it was rooted in his loyalty to the church. It was rooted into the fact that he was following the Holy Spirit in a very deep place, and he knew if he severed that, he was gonna lose himself. You know, I look at it very similarly as sort of a human representation in a small way of Jesus in the garden. You know, here you have, it's because more becomes a bit of a Christ figure in the play, where you have the worst possible thing happen to the best possible person. Here's a man working for the true and the good, and he's decimated and destroyed, and all he had to do was tell a little white lie, and he'd be off the hook.
Yeah.
And yet, the fact that he stood up to it, the fact that he handled it with such grace, such courage, such joy.
Yeah, yeah.
That what that does to people watching him, watching the show, watching people, is it says to them, you know, it has a cathartic experience, like a cleansing, like a baptism.
And he didn't, Max, even see himself as a martyr. He just said, well, this is sort of what I'm supposed to do. It's a sense of duty, wasn't it?
Well, he said, he tells the hangman or the executioner, do not be afraid of your office, you send me to God.
Yeah, yeah.
And Cramner asks in the play, "Are you so sure of that?" And he says, "He will not. He will not forego someone who's so blithe to go to him."
Yeah.
And it reminds me of something Lewis said: "Is if you find in yourself a desire that no experience in this world could satisfy, the most probable explanation is that we were made for another world."
Way to go. Way to go. Our hearts we come from you, O Lord, and our hearts are restless till they return to you for all eternity. Augustine. You got to do something on Augustine. How do you decide? How do you decide? Because there's so much out there. Do people propose things to you?
Yeah, we get material regularly that comes, but it has to be theatrically compelling. It has to work on stage, and in that sense, it has to be very entertaining. Because if we don't entertain our audiences, they're not going to hear the message of the play.
That's right. That's
so
right.
it really has to be theatrically compelling, imaginative, multi-layered, and then the message just comes out just freely.
You do have a bias for the classics, though, don't you?
I do.
You do have a...
Well, that's primarily because, unfortunately, we're not... the current crop of playwrights are not writing these kinds of plays.
Yeah. What about, who have we had on the show, Father Dave, like that does the Chesterton stuff and the Belloc stuff? I forget his name. Can you guys remember?
I do as well.
You'd forget his name
Yes,
as well?
I do.
I know if you know
Well, I
him,
should
Max,
look him
but-
up because we would love to look at Chesterton.
Yeah.
But of course, those are the people, that was kind of the glory days of that kind of writing.
And they all affected one another.
Yeah, they
I
did.
remember when you did the Reluctant Convert, you had him walking with all these
Tolkien.
people.
And of course,
Tolkien,
Chesterton was a huge influence on
and
Lewis.
I loved him because they all drank and smoked.
Right. I kind of like it too.
Cigars, pipes, and liquor, and good food.
Right.
None of them were watching their cholesterol.
By the way,
I'll tell
did you
that.
know what in the 50s, you know, canned beer was beginning to make its presence, and you know what Lewis called canned beer? An abomination.
Natural law.
Not because of the beer, because of the can.
He probably didn't even like the bottled beer. He was right out of the tap. He wanted the tap, right? Yeah. Who have we had in America that could match any of them? Could there be anybody with classics
Well,
like
I think
that?
in terms of talent, certainly Arthur Miller had the talent, and I would,
I'm
and
trying
I
to think
do
of some
think,
religious ones.
and
Can
I
you?
do think Death of a Salesman has a very
yeah.
deep religious significance. In fact, I could make a case for FPA producing.
Way to go. I
Death of
love
a
that.
Salesman.
That's one of my favorites. I'm trying to think, well, you got Isaac Hecker.
Yes, sure. He was
Orestes Brownson, maybe.
great. Yeah. Dale Ahlquist is who you were thinking
Dale
of.
Ahlquist is in it.
if you know.
Fulton Sheen, maybe.
Yes.
You think of
Fulton Sheen would be great.
Father Newhouse, Richard John Newhouse,
John
Cardinal
Sure.
Dolan. Some of these great
Soon to be Saint
intellects.
John Henry Newman.
Yeah, John Henry Newman. Have we done anything on him?
Not yet.
Way to go!
Lots to go.
I'm glad you're doing that not yet stuff because you got a lot of. Oh boy! And who's in this cast? How many?
Well, it's Michael Countryman, Carolyn McCormick. It's a very strong
So you got
cast.
a pretty good because usually you
It's
also
about 10, it's a 10-person play.
You
Runs
like-
through March 3rd.
you like to keep things lean because you've got a pretty
you
thrifty
can, but
production.
I mean, some of these plays require the number
Sure.
of parts that they have.
Sure,
So.
you stay away from music usually, right?
Yes, but
glad
I'm not.
I heard you sing.
Primarily because I'm not a musician. My taste in music is not particularly strong. So, but I do think that we should consider we should consider musicals as well.
Yeah, yeah. You know,
The budgets tend to skyrocket.
Yes, they
there
do.
you go. Sure. Boy, oh boy. Well, if you need any choreography and all, Father Dave will help with it.
Will do.
He tap dances and everything. So, well, where is it again,
It's
Max?
at the Acorn Theater, 42nd and 9th. Where
Where
we
your
do most
other
of our
ones
work.
were, the Acorn
Yes.
Theater,
Theater
42nd
Row.
and 9th.
Theater
And
Row.
where could give our folks, if they're coming to town, how they
if they
can
go
get?
to our theater, our website is FPA, Frank Paul Adam, FPA Theater.com, FPAtheater.com.
All righty, and they could get, you're only on for another 2 weeks.
That's right. That's
Okay,
right. We
it's-
started in early January, so we've had a good run.
It's a shame you're not going through Lent, but this is good. Didn't one of them you had to extend for a while?
Most Reluctant Convert.
Yeah, I remember
And Screw
that.
Tape Letters.
All right, way to go. Way to go.
Thank you, Max.
Bravo. Thank you, Max.
Thank
Keep
you,
up
sir.
the good work. We need you.
Thank